sure I don't need that. Thank you. Sarah Appleton, I appreciate you guys allowing me to speak tonight. I have 2 boys who attend Ryan Park Elementary School. My husband is a teacher and a coach in the district. And I want to start off by saying this is opinions of myself, not a representation of him. I just texted him right now to let him know I'm speaking, so he has no idea that I'm here. But we've had incidents happen at Ryan Park Elementary School in the high school within the last couple months, unfortunately, that involved, police coming, guns drawn, a sweep of the school, and the communication that went to the community, in my opinion, was lackluster. Number one, I originally found out about the Ryan Park one from a post on Facebook because someone heard it on dispatch and they posted it on Facebook. I've reached out to, unfortunately, my best friend who lives in Colorado. This same incident happened at her school the next day after ours. Within minutes of it happening, she had an email that stated what was going on. We will give you updates. So number one is just the communication of what is occurring. In the world we live in, it comes quick. People know. And as a school board, as a community, as representing the school, I think that needs to come in a manner that gets out in front of everyone else. Otherwise, as soon as I hear, there's police going to my kid's school, that's mass chaos. So it needs to come in a manner that is quick as possible with limited information. But then the communication that came out afterwards, again, was almost like a sweep it under the rug. I wasn't aware of the communication or the conversation I needed to have with my kids afterwards, how serious it really was, what happened in that talk. On top of that, I really think we missed a huge opportunity to publicly thank our staff and administration that did amazing through that. I heard stories of my son, teacher, was telling stories to her kids to keep them calm, make sure they knew that they were safe. On top of that, we had teachers who were willing to put themselves between who they didn't know who was at the door, somebody at the door, and the kids in their classroom. And we did not publicly thank them. This is a thankless job already. We need to thank them for what they do and how willing they are to protect our children, as well as the police that came. There wasn't a thank you, a public, that I'm aware of. I apologize. Nothing I'm aware of that went to the public that said thank you for that. The same thing at the high school. I actually was out of town. I called my husband to say, hey, are you at the high school? Because I hear cops are going there, which is scary for him. He's staff, did not hear about it ahead of time. He walked into a place where he shows up, he's being told to leave, he's responsible for kids in the school. On top of that, got home that night and again, no communication out. I know it went to the high school parents, but not the entire community. And I just think as a school board, as administration, we need to do better at allowing the community just needs to know. And with the way communication happens, you guys can control that in a manner before it comes out and rumors or people just, saying we heard this and we heard that and now we have compiled this random story. But you guys have the power to do that, and that communication can be as quick as we need it to be. And the follow-up, and again, the praise for the teachers, they deserve it. So I just want to make sure that teachers that are here, and I apologize, I don't know all of you, but we appreciate you. And I think that when you get the opportunity as an administration to tell them that, we need to do it loud and proud and publicly so they know, so the whole community knows how thankful we are for their willingness to do that. So thank you.
I make a motion that we go ahead and approve both the January 9th and the January 23rd minutes.
Second that.
And the vote, please.
Mr. Archbold?
Yes.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
And Mr. Reidenauer?
Yes.
Motion carries a vote of 7-0. Approval of claims. Any comments or or questions regarding the claims this month? Do we have a motion?
Make a motion claims be paid?
I second.
And the vote, please.
Mr. Archibald,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Boots,
Yes.
Mr. Caswell,
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart,
Yes.
Mr. Poor,
Aye.
and Mr. Ridenhour.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Personnel considerations, Dr. Wiedenhofer.
Board, in your packet, you do have personnel considerations for tonight. We do have retirements, resignations, appointments, and a few reassignments. And I ask that you approve those as presented.
Do we have a motion?
Make a motion, we approve the personnel considerations.
I'll second.
And the vote, please.
Mr. Archibald,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Boots,
Yes.
Mr. Caswell,
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart,
Yes.
Mr. Poor,
Aye.
and Mr. Ridenhour.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Irwin, we have a special report.
I am here tonight to help recognize Brant Moore, an outstanding teacher that we have at Angola Middle School, and to welcome Christina Minnick, the chapter historian, and Sherry Carpenter, the chapter regent for the Daughters of the American Revolution. Brant was recommended to receive an award as the Outstanding History Teacher of the Year. And they have exciting news about that nomination, and I'd like to invite them and Brant up to receive that award.
Hi, guys. It's been a long time. Okay, so first I am going to read a little deal here about what the qualifications are for this award. To qualify for this award, these teachers have had to have demonstrated excellence in readily sharing an incisive knowledge of American history, demonstrating a commitment to their students, fostering a spirit of patriotism and loyal support for our country, relating history to modern life and events, and requiring a high academic standard at all times from all of their students. And so we had to have, first we talked to Brant, and he had to come forward with some different letters of representation from different people saying that, yeah, he would meet those requirements. And then I had to speak with Mrs. Irwin and get, yes, this is in fact who he is. And then I had to compile some things and send it to the state DAR. And they went through all of their applicants, and officially, or unofficially I should say, he finished number 4. In order to be a state finalist to go on to nationals, he has to be in the top 3. But, you know, we found out he was 4th, and we were very excited. But for our chapter, he was the chapter winner. And so for that, he gets I'm going to let you go do plaque presentations and do the little handshake deals and posing over here. I'm going to get some pictures while you do that. So this is our chapter regent and president, Sherry Carpenter.
Thank you.
And my job as a historian is to capture everything in pictures. That's what I do. Awesome. And so this is the first time we have ever presented this award. As far as Sherry and I could find, at least 20 years back, we have no record of any teacher in Steuben County receiving this
For
award.
American history.
And it is the first time we've ever sent anyone that has, the state historian had no record of us ever sending anyone. So it's kind of a big deal. We were very excited. I was really excited because I remember being in Brant's classroom my first year at MSD and getting to actually experience some of the things I got to write about. So it was really cool. Not that I'm saying I've been doing this for a while.
And I've known Brant a number of years.
Okay, and so with this award, we felt that there needed to be something, a additional just for him because he does put so many extra hours in. So you have a little monetary something for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
And then this is a pin. I'll let you- I taped it really good so I wouldn't lose it because I know I can only get one. It's only given to someone who is a recipient of this award, and so you can only purchase one per award winner for your chapter. So we can't get another one until we have another person who qualifies. So, and then I have a copy of our letter that we sent so you can see all the nice things we said about you.
Thank you.
And that is what we have for you. And we are so proud of you because it was really cool to be able to actually have somebody that we can put in our scrapbook now, that we can say, hey, we got somebody that actually we could say is an outstanding teacher. And we have so many that we feel like could be recognized, but we wanted you to be our first one because
Thank you very much.
it was an honor to get to.
That would be great.
Oh, you can't sit down yet. Bring that up here and stand right here to face out there because I'm gonna make them all get out of their seats and we're gonna get a nice picture.
Next up, we have a demographics presentation. Dr. Wiedenhofer.
Board, if you remember right, several board meetings ago, we had a conversation about looking at what our possible enrollment might look like or kind of projecting forward. One of the motions that we made was asking the McKibben Group to come and run some demographics for us and give us a report on kind of what our projections could possibly look like in 10 years. So tonight you have that report in front of you. Patrons, you have those in your packets if you're interested in kind of following along. But we do have Dr. McKibben here to kind of present those findings for us. So we appreciate him. We're making him do double duty today a little bit. He met earlier with us and kind of gave us the preliminary numbers, but he's here to share with you just kind of a quick summary and to field any kind of questions that you have. So we appreciate you being here tonight, and I'll turn it over to you there, Dr. McKibben.
Once.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Matt, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Congratulations on your award, sir. I'm proud to tell you, my undergraduate, one of my majors was history, and I use it daily in my work for the last 35 years, so, an underappreciated discipline. Two things I wanted to say before I go into the results of the forecast. Number one, most important, these are forecasts, they're not projections, okay? A projection is where you take a variable or two, usually year-to-year survivorship, second to third, third to fourth, over a 5-year period of time, create an algorithm, and take those results and literally project it into the future. Very quick, simple, easy, cheap. Up until about the 1990s, all you had for enrollment research. The problem with the projection is they're almost always wrong, because the only way a projection can be correct is what's happened the last 5 years replicates itself over the next 5 and 10. I don't know about you guys, I don't want to see the last 5 years again in my lifetime. So this is a forecast, two-step procedure. The first thing we do is a full population forecast for your entire population by attendance area. 0 to 4 to 85 plus, male and female. We build a fertility, a mortality, and migration model specific to each attendance area. Pull off all the 2020 census data for each attendance area, home sales, home building, household structure, family structure, age structure, any variable we can lay our hands on we use to build these forecast models. The results of the population forecast then drives the enrollment forecast. So it's your current and future demographic dynamics that dictate your enrollment, not your past trends. The other thing I want to point out is do not let Rock Hill, South Carolina fool you. You know, notice I do not have a southern accent. I was born and raised north of Fort Wayne. I went to Carroll High School in Northwest Allen. My doctoral dissertation was on Indiana demographics. I used to be Indiana State demographer back in the 80s and 90s. And we did MSD Steuben 10 years ago, was it? Yeah, 10 years ago. And no one believed me then either, so I'll take it personally this time. But about 250 Indiana school districts we've done over the years. So, okay, first slide. Anytime you're doing forecasts, you have to have assumptions. These are broad socioeconomic demographic parameters, so to speak, that we use to build our forecast models. Now, I don't want to go through all of them, but I want to go through the big four. We call them the big four because these are the four assumptions that have the highest probability of error. If you're going to have any kind of variation or going to throw the forecast off, something's going to happen in these big four. And number one, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate stays between 5.5 and 7.5%. Why is it so important? It drives your housing market, okay? Now, housing market, to put it mildly, is kind of weird right now. This morning, the mortgage rates were about 7%. Now, to those of us who are old enough to remember the 70s, 80s, 90s, even close to 2000s, when the 30-year fix was 8, 9, 10, 12%, 7 sounds pretty good. My first house mortgage was 7.5% that were robbing the bank. However, to the kids today, as anybody in the age of 40, seeing nothing but 3, 3.5, and 4 for the last 10 years, 7 sounds like highway robbery. You have to remember that something's happened here in the last 2 years that's never happened before in U.S. history, and that's the 30-year mortgage rate doubling in 2 years. Has never happened before. And that's what's causing a lot of the gyrations in the housing market right now. Jerome Powell's giving an indication he's taking his foot off the gas, but he's not going to tap the brake yet. So, you know, may not go any higher than 7, 7.5. We may touch 8 if things get dicey, but we're definitely not going to drop below 5.5 or 5. The days of 3, 3.5, 4% mortgage rates are over. One small sidebar on this, that's one reason why you're seeing an absolute stalling in the move-up market, because you've got the young families out there that bought starter homes and got 3, 3.5, 4% mortgages, looking at that nice move-up home, level up a little bigger, don't want to get rid of that cheap mortgage and get one at 6.5 to 7 for the move-up home. They can't afford it. 1 point increase in 30-year fixed mortgage rate adds $800 a month to a $400,000 home mortgage. It has a very disproportionate effect. Number 2, second most important one, is transfer rates. This is Indiana. It's the only state in the country that has interdistrict transfers, vouchers, charters, and virtual going on all at the same time. The only good thing that's come out of that is Indiana has the best student tracking system in the country, bar none. No one else is even close. The annual fall report comes out. We have that. We can see where the students live, what school district they go to, and at what numbers. And we've got the reports on our computers back to 2017. We assume that the district will have a net 100 student transfer number annually over the next 10 years. And popped up a little bit. The interesting thing about MSD Steuben, this kind of makes you guys a bit of an outlier. You have a large in-transfer flow. Last year's report was 273. You also have a large out-transfer, 316. Up here in Northeast Indiana, kids are just going all over the place. Very, very small number going to privates because you don't have that many privates. There are no charters up here. So your total net's about 100. We figure that's going to continue at that level. And we do that for 2 very important reasons. One, I have no idea what the parents are going to decide next year. Be foolhardy to try it. But by holding it constant, when you see changes in the enrollment, these are caused by your demographic factors, not by any policy changes or anything like that. So you know, the state may change the laws. They changed it this year. They raised the minimum income for private school vouchers to, I think it was from $165,000 to $220,000. 96% of all households in the state with school-aged kids now qualify for private school vouchers. And one more thing about transferring. During COVID, all the non-public rates went up. Homeschool, private, charter, virtual, just all went up in 21 and then 22. And they've come back down. But they haven't come back down to pre-COVID levels. Homeschool, which was 1 or 2%, now running about 2 to 3. Charters are still running about 5% as an average. It used to be down around 3. The wild card out there is virtual, because virtual before COVID was virtually nothing. No one had technology or anything like that. Everybody put it in, made people go virtual. No one liked it. Well, most people didn't like it. And now it's come back down. But where it was 0 before COVID, now it's running about 3 or 4%. You've got things like Union School Corp in Randolph County, Indiana, 400 students, K through 12, half don't even go to their own school, and they have 5,000 virtual students. Virtually every school district in the state it's losing some students to Union School Corp. Okay, next slide, please. The other two I want to cover, new and existing home sales. Most school districts in the country, by most I mean 90% of them, existing home sales makes up 80 to 90% of your housing market, okay? Over the last 10 years, the district gained about 400 housing units, about 40 a year. We're figuring to maintain that going forward. The more important number is the 410 existing home sales, which is right about your average too. Add them up, 440 households changing per year going forward. Now, everybody fixates on new home construction. Existing home sales is the real driver of your population change. Who's moving out and who's moving in, what's their household and what's their family characteristics. So this is I think probably the most important variable and actually has the biggest impact on your enrollment going forward. So when we do the evaluation next fall on your enrollment, and we see any error in there, the first thing we're going to look at is the housing market. Did you have 410? There was a great piece in Bloomberg about a month ago. They looked at the 200 largest metropolitan areas in the United States, looked at their home sales in 23, total home sales, versus what it was in 2019. And in only 8 of those 200 metropolitan areas was it back up to 2019 levels. Most places, and this is included, running about 20% below, because the elderly have just stopped moving during COVID and pick it back up again. So the key variable here is get on Zillow, RealtyTrack, Realtor.com, like we do, and see what your housing market's doing. Get it right down to the address level. But you can get on there and see what your neighbors are behind on their mortgages. Great way to spice up the next cocktail party. You know, used to do that for my dad all the time. Oh, the Brown family down the street, they're 3 months behind. I'm serious. Everything about your house is public domain data. It's on the internet. So, next slide. The number one predictive variable for population enrollment change, it's not birth, it's not death, it's not migration. It's age structure. How is your population distributed across the life course? And here, you'll notice this big bubble here, that's Trine University, okay? College students are kind of where they go to school, not where they're from. So they're always in census numbers. We have to filter those out because they come in at 18, stay till 22, 23, 24, move back out. It's constantly churning over. It's one reason why I quit teaching college, because the only person on campus aging was me. The kids all stayed the same age. People have no sense of humor. They're easy to read, 0 to 4, that's your preschool. No, go back. Did I do that? Okay. All right.
It is a touch screen.
Okay, I'll keep it away. That's elementary, middle, high school. Your resident 20 to 34-year-olds called family formation ages. 80% of all births occur to women between the ages of 20 and 34 years old. Despite what you've read in the popular press, fertility rates in this country haven't changed that much in the last 50 years. They've stayed a nice, tight 15% band between 1.6 and 2.0 children per woman in a lifetime. Now, we're looking at resident birth rates. It's residents, the births having while they're living in the district. If a woman has 2 children and then moves into the district, that's not birth, that's migration. We measure that separately. 35 to 54 years old are the ages where most people have kids in school. Most parents here in the audience are between the ages of 35 and 54. Now, there are exceptions. I was one. I was a first-time father at 40. But there weren't that many of us. 55 to 69, we call the empty nest ages. This is where it gets confusing for people. You got the Smith family down the road, been living there for 20 years. 10 years ago, there was mom, dad, and 2 kids in there. But in the last 10 years, the kids have grown up, graduated high school, went off to college, and haven't come back. So it's the same house, it's the same owner, but instead of 4 persons per household, you've only got 2. So your yield has dropped. Notice how you're got a large bubble population now, late 50s, early 60s. Go back 10 years ago, they probably had kids in school. Okay? And they've emptied nesting. That's one reason why your enrollment was dropping in the last decade. It was not because of out-migration, but because of empty nesting. 70 and older is what we call the turnover ages. You'll see a slight uptick at 62, another one at 65, but most people don't downsize till they're in their 70s. It's not retirement that triggers downsizing. It's either the death of one of the spouses or they both lose the ability to drive. And you've got to have a card and be able to drive around to survive in the school district, as in most school districts, okay? Early elderly migrants, people in their 60s, tend to be the healthy, the wealthy, still 2-person households. Those are the ones that tend to go off to Florida or Georgia or Texas or Carolina or whatever. Everybody notices those. That's only about 15 to 20% of elderly migration. The bulk of it's over 70, and it's again triggered by either mortality or lack of mobility, okay? But if I know the percent homeowners in the area, and I know their age structure, that gives me a proxy variable to tell me how many homes are going to go on the market over the next 10 years. I can see in the next slide, get it broken down, and we kept the, this is, again, with trying there, it kind of accentuates it. These bars would be about here if you take the trying students out. Again, older population, relatively small going up. In the other 2 areas, Ryan Park, I think is the next one, no, it's Pleasant Lake. You see, very, very small population. But what is out there, the bulk of it is over 55. Most schools, or most households don't have any school-age kids in them, or kids at all. And you'll notice a deficit here in the 0 to 4. If left to your own demographic devices in this area, no one moves in, no one moves out. Your enrollment in the area drops. Why? Because the cohorts coming in behind it, 0 to 4, are smaller than the 5 to 9s. So you would need some in-migration, bring in preschoolers just to break even. That's why you just can't take growth and add it to your enrollment because you don't know what the size of cohorts coming behind it are. Next one's Ryan Park. Bigger, but the thing with Ryan Park, you'll notice there's a lot of people in high school ages right now and middle school ages, and again, relatively small cohorts coming out. So at the elementary level, stays somewhat flat, but your high school level, middle school level, it's going to have a negative because there's fewer kids coming in. And again, the bulk of the adult population is in the late 50s, early 60s. The pace and the magnitude of your existing home turnover, how fast these elderly turn over their households, is going to be the major factor in what's going to affect your population, your enrollment, your household structure, your family structure. They're all linked in. That's why you have to track the housing market very carefully. Next slide. Some of your demographic characteristics. only 28% of your households have under 18 population. That includes preschoolers. And also, your household size, 2.38, about 2.5 in Pleasant Lake and Ryan Park, but it's smaller with households around the university, the ones that don't live in dorms. Now, persons per household is an underappreciated variable. If you look at traditional two-parent household, you got mom, dad, remember the point is kids. So you got like 0.38 under 18 population. Now, in the last 10 years, the district, like the rest of the state, the rest of the country, saw a drop in household size. Yours went from 2.47 to 2.38. Now, 0.12 doesn't sound like a lot until you multiply it by 7,000 housing units. If your household size had stayed the same in 2020, had it had been in 2010, you would have counted 600 more people in the census. And the vast majority of them would have been under the age of 18. So this, and then why did it drop so much? All the empty nesting going on. People had kids in 2010, they had moved away and were empty nesters by 2020. So next slide. Householders 35-54, 31% probably have school-age kids. That's dropping. The good news, you have 30% of your households over the age of 65, and that's going to do nothing but go up, just like the rest of the country. So they're going to have more and more elderly homeowners that will be turning their homes over, particularly after 2026, 27. Owners versus renters, about 70% for the district in the 80s in the outlying area, 61 in the urban core. Makes sense. You tend to have apartments in urbanized areas. Owners and renters have two completely different dynamics. Renters tend to be younger, still forming their families, and move an average of every 2 years. Homeowners have usually completed their family formation, don't have any more kids, older and wealthier, and move an average every 14 years. One's more static, one's more mobile. And another point on this, there's two numbers. There's kids per household and there's school-age kids per household. And in rental units, those numbers tend to be far apart. You'll see lots of kids there, but a lot of them are preschoolers, okay? But most people don't want to raise their kids in an apartment. So child gets to be first one, oldest one, 4, 5, 6 years old. They're looking for some place, single-family detached home. Owners, for the most part, have completed their family formation, may have a few preschoolers, but the number between kids per household and school-age kids is much, much closer together. So again, completely different dynamics in this. Next slide. Single-person households, about 30%. Single and over 65, that's usually due to mortality. 12% and going up. So again, you're going to have more and more elderly households turning over in the next 10 years. Next slide. Now this is my favorite data from 2020 because we have the individual year of age. So in 2020, 5-year-olds, that's your kindergarten, first grade, second, third, fourth, fifth. But now in 2023, these 2-year-olds are now 5. That's your first grade, second, third, fourth, fifth. We do this for 2 reasons. We look at a relative cohort size within the area and see how much of a deficit you have. Now, a great example here is the 5-year-olds in Carly Park, Henry. Those are together because they draw from the same attendance area. 161 drops to 130, my error, goes back up to 138. So, oh, it's a small cohort coming in kindergarten, it's out-migration, people are fleeing. No, you should drop about 60 because it's a small cohort coming in. And the next year it pops back up. Oh, 35 students, must be growth. No, it's just, and we want to take out that, we'll call the cohort effect. We want to pull systematic error out of the numbers so you're not using that in your calculations. Got a slight pop coming in next year for your elementary, your kindergarten students. These are your kindergarten students in next year. The district goes 177 up to 212. I didn't touch anything. goes back to 177. So it kind of helps in planning on the short term. You see it's coming, you got 40 more kindergarten students in the cohort. Now, what we do with this is the next slide, and that's what we call the market share, okay? And this is the district enrollment by grade, and we compare it to the census numbers. Those numbers in red are first grade for each year. So in 2010, 6-year-olds are first graders. 194 is almost 80% of what this 243 is. Now, 2000 is the depth of COVID. Everybody's percentages were down there, so they popped up. So you had kids returning to the public sector. But if percentages go up, that's either in migration or in transfer. If they go down, they're out migration or out transfer. And you can see you're running consistently about 90% plus on your kindergarten cohorts. The problem is, this year, 97.2%, that's a pretty healthy rate. It's at 172, but I did that was mine. So it was 143 5 years earlier, 243. You needed to have at least 70 students moving in, born in the 2017 cohort, just to break even. And this is the challenge for school districts, not just through Indiana, but the Midwest and most parts of the country. Births have been dropping for 15 years and took a real drop in 21 and 22. So the trends are against you. One of my favorite stats from the 2020 census nationally, we grew by 22 million people last decade. Slowest growth rate since the 1930s, but still 22 million increase. But the under 18 population dropped by 1 million. And pretty much the same proportion drop in Indiana in most areas. So it's a shrinking pie. That's why you're having all these school districts in Indiana go out there fighting for students from their neighbors because they're not having enough births. And that situation is not going to change. But many of your cohorts are going up. So you're having in-migration. They're bringing kids with them. Problem is, it's not enough to fill in that deficit, the preschool, because those cohorts are smaller than the ones you had in elementary school 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. Next slide. This is the population forecast. Your report has one for each one of the attendance areas. This is the district total. Now, there's two ways to read this. You can follow an age cohort over time. 5 to 9 is roughly your elementary. So we've got 1,059, 1,080, 1,050, 1,120. Or follow an age cohort over time. 0 to 4 becomes 5 to 9, 10 to 14, 15 to 19. Median age, now yours is lower than most areas because you have a college here. Okay, and that keeps it down, but it's still going up. And that's the aging process. Births, this is the 5-year births for each 5-year forecasting bracket, drops slightly, not because of drop in fertility rate, but a drop of resident women prime childbearing age. Deaths go up, not because of COVID, but because of an aging population. The peak of the baby boom this year is 67 years old, and the front end is 77. Go forward 10 years, those numbers are the peak at 77 and the front end at 87. We already had, before COVID, 4 states and 800 counties in the U.S. with more deaths than births. Even after COVID returned to those trends, Indiana's got 15 of them. We'll probably pick up about 3 more a year over the next 10 years in this state. Probably about 4 or 5 more states in the country go ZPG, and probably about 300 or 400 more counties. That is the dominant demographic trend in the next 10 years, by the way. Net migration, that's net. How many people are moving in, how many are moving out. We use Internal Revenue Service migration data for that. Your biggest in-migration flows of resident non-college students are 25 to 40 years old, bringing 4 to 9-year-olds, or 0 to 9-year-olds with them. Your biggest out-migration flow, is 18 to 22-year-olds, your resident high school graduates, and people over the age of 70. But you've got more coming in than you've got going out right now. And it stays pretty flat going forward. The results of this POP forecast then drives the enrollment forecast, which is the next slide. Okay, now the analogy I use here is a bucket of water. If I've got a bucket of water, and I'm pouring water in the top, and there's a hole in the bottom, as long as I'm pouring in faster than it's going out, the bottom level will rise. But if for some reason the hole in the bottom gets bigger, and it's going out faster than I'm pouring in, even if I keep pouring in the same rate, level will drop. Enrollment works the same way. What's the size of the K-1s coming in versus the size of the 12th grade going out? Now, fortunately, you're going to get a little bit of break on that because over the last 5 years, your 12th grade classes averaged 196 kids. Over the next 10 years, they're going to average 161. So that's 30 less students a year you're going to have move in just to keep your enrollment. But if you'll notice, in the district level, you've got 3 pretty good-sized 12th grade cohorts going out the next 3 or 4 years, which is one big reason why your total enrollment drops. But once that last big one gets out, you start dropping down to 144, it breaks even. You start getting down into the 150s consistently, you start seeing a slight increase. Why is that? Because you're going to see an increasing number of kindergarten and first graders coming in after 2027. What's going to drive that? Elderly housing units turning over, like new young households move in, okay? That's the number one assumption on this. Now, if things continue like they have been the last 3 years, where the elderly just aren't moving, they're staying put, I'll be the first person to tell you, I'm going to be too high. Conversely, and this is my real fear, you've got all those people out there, they're old, they've had their houses for 20, 30 years, they're sitting on a ton of equity, start to see a little softening in the housing market, and they want to get out while the getting's good. They all start dumping their homes on the market at once. You will then see builders stop building overnight, just like we did in 2008. So, but those are on the short term particularly, how many of those homes go on the market? And as long as the youngsters with kids can get a mortgage, the mortgage rates don't go above 8%, or in this case 7.5, you will see this trend. So your total enrollment bottoms out about 2,300 in 2028 and slowly starts to creep up as you start seeing these bigger cohorts going in, smaller going out. And it'll not quite long enough, but it'll happen in the K-5. You'll just start seeing a little bit of it coming up here in the middle school. The high school, probably going to wind up being about 70 students. If we took less, if we took this out farther, you would start to see an upturn in the high school. But even with that, your net enrollment for the district is 10 years from now, still about 80 less than it is now. And again, it's that pace and magnitude of existing home turnover is going to be the number one driver. I had that 25 minutes. That's pretty good for me.
How do you compare that, like you said, that net 80 at the end of 10 years? How do you compare that to, say, surrounding areas of the Midwest?
I couldn't hear a word you said, sir.
You said if we go out 10 years, you see it being at net 80-ish.
Yeah.
How does that compare to the region and Midwest?
State of Indiana, you're probably going to see about 80% of all school districts lose enrollment. Most of them will be far, far greater than yours. Because they may have existing home turnover, they may have early move, but there's no young people to move in. You've got 2 major interstate highways, you have a university, you're a regional supply center for this part of the state. There's a lot of potential, for people who want to, live here, if they can find a house that they can afford with their mortgage. So that's probably going to keep your decline level amongst probably one of the lower ones in the state. Other counties, which I will not name publicly at this time since you're recording this, right? Right, okay. There's other ones out there that just going to get killed. That's even before transfers come in. We're talking 15, 20% drops in enrollment in 10 years with no hope of coming back. So actually, you guys are in pretty good shape.
Dr. McKibben, real quick before you do leave or conclude your presentation, can you do a quick forecast on each one of our elementaries, middle school, high school real quick?
I put those back here just because I knew someone was going to ask that question.
That's right.
All right. I believe the first one we have up is, no, it's the other direction. Oh, no, two more, go two more. Another one. There we go, Carlin Park first, okay. Carlin Park, Henley has the same trends that draw from the same area, okay. Basically, it's pretty flat, okay. Same thing with Henley up next. You'll notice this one is also pretty flat. And we assume that you're going to keep the same internal transfer program, student assignments, things like that. So if you decided we're going to put another section, one school out of the other, add or subtract the forecast results. But there's enough turnover, there's enough young people, there's enough fertility, they're going to maintain. It gets interesting when you go to the next one, which is Pleasant Lake, okay? 100 students, and it's going to stay 100 students, okay? Even if every elderly housing unit in Pleasant turned over in the next 2 years, and they brought school-age kids in there, you couldn't get that number back up above 150. When Pleasant was built, like it was in most of the other areas of the state, okay, we built this giant school system in Indiana for baby boom, us people. We graduated high school in 74 and 75. That's when they finished it. The problem is, Indiana never had a baby boomlet. Our births in this state never got within 75% of the baby boom total. And household size shrunk. When these buildings were built like Pleasant in that area, you were averaging about 4 to 4.5 kids per household. Now it's 1.8. We're not going to go back up to 4.5 again. And secondly, about half the households had school-age kids or under 18 population in it. Now it's running about a third, and that's pretty good for any area of the country. So unless you go back to 4 or 5 kids per household in half the housing units in the area, you can't get that enrollment back up above 200. Okay. So given what you do have out there, household size, people moving in, you're going to be bouncing between 80 and 100 going forward. Just not enough population housing units out there to warrant it, which is a different situation when it was built, what, 60 years ago? When Pleasant was built? About that?
Double that.
Double that. 120? 100 years ago. Wow. Same building?
Question.
Sir?
100 years ago, was it a high school and elementary?
It was a full.
Was there
Yeah.
just a way to elementary? You had
Yeah.
everybody that was like put in that same building.
Yeah, before they, now I was in grade school when they first consolidation in the 60s. And Carroll that was Huntertown and Arcola. They put the same thing up here. We had like 780 school districts in the state. I think we're sitting at about 270 now. So they've consolidated. So a lot of them, yeah, were, K-12s. The only remaining ones left in the state are either in Randolph County or Porter. They still kind of hung on there, and they're broke. But again, those days, it was structured as purely the township school system. They had to have K-12 in there, probably in one building. I know Huntertown was. That was built in 23. I think it was a fire trap, But this building here that you're using, is it the same one that was built in 2008? Really? Fire marshal know this? I'm joking. Okay. Next one is Ryan. All right. Now, when I was a kid, growing up in North Fort Wayne, every year, my dad worked for Magnavox. Every year, Magnavox had a family picnic, and it came up to Pokagon, Lake James area, and one uncle had a cottage over in Pretty Lake, one had one in Big Long Lake, and up around this area here. This was the vacation spot for us when we were kids growing up. Ever remember Buck Lake Ranch, when it used to be up there? That's where they used to hold that picnic all the time. Did I just age myself badly with this? Okay, anyway. 50 years later, a lot of these old lake cottages have been upgraded to housing units. The winterized and all that, people living year round. Problem is, most people who live in those things, most of them are elderly. Okay, they don't have a whole lot of kids. So that's why you gotta be careful, particularly with Ryan Park, where you have a lot of these kind of conversions, what we call them, housing units out there. They sell those, they're not gonna go to people with kids in most cases. They're gonna go to people in their 40s and 50s using a retirement home. So your traditional households, housing units, freestanders, not on the lake, those turning over is gonna dictate it. So it drops to 333 and basically stays flat because there's not enough volume to move the needle on that. Okay, and that's the problem with Ryan, he's not gonna have enough volume. If they all left today, and I'm talking to people over 65 out there, that weren't on the lake or lakes and put their house on the market, you might get this back up to about 390, but I don't think it's gonna happen. People who live in MSD Steuben, most of them I've talked to, like living in MSD Steuben. They have no reason to want to go anyplace. So if you want to see your enrollment pop back up, just get all those nasty empty nesters to move away. That answer everything?
What's the acronym, ZPG? Is it ZP?
ZPG, zero population growth. It's a point where your births, your deaths exceed your births. And you're looking that up on the internet, the 4 states are West Virginia, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Maine. And West Virginia's been ZPG, 14 years now. The median age is the highest in the country, even higher, about 3 years higher than Florida's. And why it happened is not like Florida, where, people moved in. That's they call migration aging. They were called aging in place. All their young people left because there's no jobs there. They shut down the coal mines. All that was left was people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, aging forward. Two different dynamics.
Okay, and I know the state really hurt us when they gave such a huge amount to private schools and charters and everything like that. But it doesn't seem to be affecting us.
Who, you guys?
To be affecting public schools, it is to an extent, but we don't have a lot up here. Do you see that as a problem possible?
Well, you don't have a lot of charters, and you don't have hardly any private. So it's not really and we've seen that all over the state. We did a paper on this just a couple of years ago. We're updating it now for the state of Mississippi. And we found that the charters and the private, the vouchers, really only hits the major urban areas, okay? Transfers hits everybody, okay? Now, the wild card in here is that new 4th variable called virtual. That's why you've got Union School Corp, Randolph County, and now Clarksville down in southern part of the state trying to get in the game now too, pick up some of that gravy. Yeah, they only, instead of giving 8,000, only give 4,000 per student. Virtual, 1,000 kids, 4,000 students, do the math, it's worth it. They're rolling dough down there. That's your wild card. Everybody's got to having access to virtual now. So that's the one I think potentially will hurt you more going forward. But until they put a charter school or expand a private school up here, they just closed Howe a couple of years back, 5 years back, and the only reason Culver's still floating around is because the Steinbrenner brothers keep dumping money into it. So I really don't see an expansion of private charters. They won't make enough money to do it, so I wouldn't look at those as competition. But again,
we'd be losing money to the voucher system that should stay in the public, that could go to public schools, right? It still is, but yet they funneled that out away from what would have been split up among the public schools.
Yeah.
They kept saying they gave this amount to there, but if you look at what they give to the private sector, no way is it anywhere equal to what they're getting student for student.
No, it's when they first went to vouchers, and they kicked up the income level, a lot of parents discovered that what the state gave you for money didn't quite cover the tuition. Because think about private schools is, there's elementary tuition, middle school tuition's higher. High school, private school tuition is almost like paying for college. And that's why you still see kids coming back into the publics, particularly at the high school level, because parents don't want to make up the difference paying the private college cost. And it's substantially higher at the high school level than it is at middle school or elementary. But again, the closest parochial high schools here are, Concordia, Dwenger, and Lures down in Fort Wayne, So unless mom and dad are living here and one's driving down to work in Fort Wayne area, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so.
Dr. McKibben, I know you do large demographics throughout the state of Indiana and those things, and you're working with different schools. In your estimation, just to estimate or maybe a ballpark guess, how many school closures do you foresee in the state of Indiana with falling demographics and decline?
The way things are going right now, we'll close at least 80 elementaries, probably 40 middles, and 15 to 20 high schools.
So you think they're gonna be absorbed into counties? I mean, like Huntington, you've got one school for the county.
Right, we just finished
You've got
Huntington.
one school for the county.
Yep.
Is that what you're thinking it's gonna go to?
Well, no, I wouldn't advise that, well, who knows, because the state legislature, giving all the great guidance they're giving us, we're doomed, but we just finished both Jay and Huntington, both are county level school districts. Both school districts are keeping schools open on their borders at about 40%, 50% capacity. Because they know if they close them, they're going to lose half the remaining kids to the neighboring school districts. Okay? And that's what's holding that up, or we'd have many more being closed right now. When you consolidate a school district, once you get above 450 square miles, you start losing efficiency. And a lot of that depends on topography and transportation, things like that. But the whole thing of, let's just make them all county level school districts, well, that's the predominant way in the South. They're almost all county level some way. Indiana, like most of the rest of the Midwest, was based originally on township schools. Then and they consolidated them together, and they screwed that up in the 60s. I mean, they couldn't have done a worse job on that. And that problem's come home to roost. So, if they could sit down and actually do a thoughtful, logical way of consolidating some school districts, it would make sense. But they're just, turning this into a pit bull fight right now. It's district against district, drive them into the ground. That's not the way how to do it. Well, we can't touch it because it's local control, hogwash, I'll be the first to admit, we've got too many schools in this state, okay? My philosophy is if a school is old enough, a building is old enough to qualify for Social Security, it needs to be retired, okay? The maintenance will kill you. And we build all these schools in the state, again, for baby boom sized cohorts, when half the households had kids and they were averaging between 4 and 5. We're not going to go back to those days again. So, and that's what's driven it to a head, not only here in Indiana, but Illinois, Ohio, New York, Pennsylvania. All these baby boom schools are now coming to the end of their natural lives. They've got to make some hard decisions because they can't afford to keep them open because of the population losses. And, I make fun of Indiana. I can do that because I'm a native Hoosier and all that. But when it comes to burying their head in the sand, no one's got it buried deeper than New York State. They've got 800 school districts up there. They probably need about 300. And they are just burning. They must take money out in the field and burn it. But they just will not consolidate their schools. They won't close any.
Thank you very much, Dr. McKibben. Appreciate you.
Always happy to bring my message of joy. If any questions do come up, Matt, you know how to get a hold of me. Please pass them on. Just send me an email, and we'll answer to the best of the ability. Or if it's like these last 2 weeks, I might just stop by and answer it. So,
We appreciate it.
okay, thank you, sir.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Old business, summer school request, Dr. Relu.
So each year, I come asking for approval to apply for the state summer school program. Again, the state said they will pay 105% of our costs. They've not done that because schools continue to request more funds than they allocate. We've been receiving around 50% reimbursement, but that is budgeted for. The dates we're proposing this year, we found it difficult last year after we took the week after Memorial Day to get families back into school the following week. So the schools have requested that we start on May 28th and run through June 7th. That will be the same dates for elementary and middle school. High school will start the same date, but they go 2 weeks longer to get their time in to finish the credit courses. We do plan to provide transportation, and at the elementary school site, we will also be serving breakfast and lunch. It will be at one building for elementary, and then middle and high school.
Do we have a motion?
Make a motion, we apply for the summer school funds?
I'll second that.
And the vote, please.
Mr. Archibald?
Yes.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Aye.
Mr. Ridenour?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. New business. We have the vote for the acceptance of funds.
Board, in your packet, we are seeking permission to accept a donation of $750 from the Steuben County Foundation. Our FISC kids, which is a conglomerate of Angola students, Hamilton, and Fremont. These kids work on providing outstanding opportunities to kind of do some volunteer work around our community. So our elementaries pitched together through a proposal to our FISC kids, and they're going to donate some monies to all 4 of our elementaries, which will go ahead and they'll start doing some community projects pending your approval of those funds.
Do we have a motion?
Make a motion, we accept the donation.
I'll second.
The vote, please.
Mr. Archibald?
Yes.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
Mr. Ridenour?
Yes.
And motion carries 7-0. Literacy grant allocations, Dr. Relu.
Created a new grant program this year. It is to reward teachers in grades K through 3 who have an impact on literacy growth for their efforts there. We didn't think that it was fair to go back and tell people after the fact what the growth metrics are going to be. But all of our teachers in K through 3, our English language learner teachers, special education, Title I, intervention, and instructional coaches, has spent the last 2 years completing an intensive science of reading course, have invested a ton of time in professional development and changing practices and changing resources. And we really felt that all of the teachers who are eligible for the grant should receive those funds. So I'm recommending to you that teachers, there are 49 teachers who were teaching in those positions last year who are still with the district this year. So each teacher who's eligible would receive $657.03. And when you add the cost of our turf and FICA that we would pay on those stipends, that totals the total grant amount of that $37,436.27. So I'm asking your approval to pay those stipends out.
Do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the literacy grant distribution. Sorry.
I'll second that.
And vote, please.
Mr. Archibald?
Yes.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots? Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Aye.
Mr. Ridenour?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have the JAG Memorandum of Understanding. And that would be Dr. Relu.
So in your packet, you have 2 separate memorandums of understanding with the JAG Northeast Indiana Works Group. The governor has set a goal that we double the number of JAG programs in the state of Indiana by the end of his tenure. So there has been an aggressive move to recruit schools to participate in JAG. JAG creates partnerships with business, industry, and education to achieve their mission of ensuring that at-risk high school students remain in high school, that they attain employability skills through classroom and work-based learning experiences, and graduate and receive follow-up services 12 years following graduation. They would hire and employ someone who would be full-time in our school at Angola High School, also at the ACE Academy. So that person would be there working with students on, finding their career interests and developing those employability skills, working on getting them placed, providing coaching in those placements, and then working on their post-graduation plan, following up with them after graduation for that next year to make sure that they're on track and intervening and providing assistance when they need to. We're confident that those resources will be an addition that is needed at ACE Academy. The high school, we are in the process of identifying the students that we would recruit for that program. And we've asked that our leadership teams be involved in final interviews for the people that they would be hiring. There are no costs to the school district for this program, other than if the teacher is out at the high school, we would need to provide a substitute for that teacher so that the students have somebody to be with them during the class. If we have an absence at ACE, likely we just wouldn't have that meeting that day. So asking for your approval of the MOUs.
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the JAG MOU.
I'll second.
The vote, please.
Mr. Archbold?
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 7-0. Next up, swimming classes at the YMCA. Dr. Relu.
So I'm excited to be able to share an opportunity with you. We have been talking with the YMCA about being able to offer swimming lessons to our students. And talking with several different groups, we've kind of narrowed that down to the age group of second graders. Interestingly, drowning is the second leading cause of death for youth under the age of 14. 79% of children from low-income families have no ability to swim. And with us being a community surrounded by water, priding ourselves on our 101 lakes, we thought it was important that we partner to make sure that our children are indeed trained to be able to swim. The Y has a nationwide program called Safety Around Water. That is the program that would be implemented at our YMCA. We would have the cost of transporting the students 5 days a week for 1 week. And their classroom teacher would accompany them or would find someone else that they would trade with who would accompany the students to go there. And then the Y would provide the lifeguard and the swim instructors for that time. They are looking at a cost of $20 to $30 per student to be able to provide that service, but are absolutely willing to work with us to write grants to cover the cost of those expenses. So we would like your permission to move forward in kind of going through and finalizing the details of this, being able to present it to the teachers and work through details, and then come back and share with you kind of what the final plan is. But we didn't want to move forward without your permission to go further. It would be during the day.
How long would the class be?
So the class would be about 45 minutes. So they would be gone in by the time they change and are in the water and then change back. So they'd probably be gone from school for about an hour for those 5 days in the week that they are scheduled to go. Love to hear about that. It would not necessarily replace gym class. It would be an addition. The teacher would adjust their, for that week, they would adjust their courses and shorten those to be able to cover everything. It's a week. Yeah. So it'd be 5 hours.
Is that everybody in a week, or you're taking this class a week and this class another week?
So it would probably be, this class at Ryan Park goes at this time, and the bus comes back, and the next class at Ryan Park goes, and the next hour, the next class goes, and then the next week, we would do a different building. One class at a time, at least 4 adults.
Do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we go ahead and approve the swimming classes at the YMCA.
I'll second.
And the vote, please.
Mr. Archibald?
Yes.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. ELC summer camp request, Dr. Relu.
So I am so proud of our Early Learning Center staff. They have recognized a need with their families for summer care, and they have stepped up and said, we would like to remain open for the families that need care through the summer. The YMCA has been a great addition at having the Y program housed at Carlin Park. Last year, we had about 120 students who were participating in that Y program. The ELC would partner with the YMCA on their activities, but the ELC staff would attend those events and those field trips and the movies and all of the fun things that they do to keep within ratio. And they would have a separate program with separate people, but they would partner on many of the age-appropriate activities. It's very challenging for families who are receiving a voucher to be able to transfer that voucher to another provider and get that provider paid, and then transfer that voucher back to our ELC. It's a lot of hoops to jump through, and many families are not successful in getting that done in the amount of time of the entire summer break. And so it puts them in a real difficult position to be able to provide care for their children over the summer months. So ELC employees would kind of work out a schedule for the summer so everyone would still have some time off. And those who wanted to work would alternate that schedule. But we anticipate about 50 families being able to take advantage of that over the summer.
Is that taken care of by the state, or is that something MSD is taking care of?
So families would continue to pay those families that pay tuition would continue to pay their same tuition rate. And then the families that are on vouchers would just continue to swipe their voucher card like they do now.
Do we have a motion?
Make a motion that we continue with the ELC program through the summer, coordinating with the Y.
And the vote, please.
Mr. Archibald?
Yes.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots? Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
Hello, school board members. We have an opportunity to apply for another grant. This is from the Indiana Office of Technology. The federal government has given a large sum of money to each state, and then each state has formed a committee to figure out how to best spend those funds for state and local government. And K-12 school districts are included in that state and local government, and they are opening the window for the grant through March 13th, where we could apply for this grant funding. The offering that they are making available to us is called CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is an antivirus, but also an endpoint detection and response program. So what that would mean is that all of our servers, whether they're virtual or physical here on site, and at least all of our staff computers would be covered by the CrowdStrike Falcon. That's what the product is called. And they're doing threat hunting on our network through that Falcon service daily, all throughout the day, 24/7. They're looking for threats on our network. They're identifying larger threats out in the world and making sure that they're not on our network. And then the response piece of this is that if there were something detected on our network, they would, within the day, descend upon our district virtually or even in person if necessary, and they would remediate that response, that threat to our network in their response. This is a fairly expensive product. The technology is fairly new. It is estimated that it would cost us, just for staff computers and the servers, will cost us about $12,000 per year. The state and local government cybersecurity grant is promising to cover that cost for us for at least 2 years, at least through June of 2026, with the potential, depending on how those funds are allocated and how many funds are left at the end, that it might be an additional 2 years, is what they're telling us at this time. So with your permission, I would like to apply for that grant and bring a new level of protection to our school district. Our hope is that when these funds run out, the technology won't be as new, it won't be as costly, and we'll be able to build that into the budget to continue to sustain the endpoint detection and response when the grant funding is complete.
Do we have a motion?
I move we accept cyber grant.
I'll second that.
The vote, please.
Mr. Archbold?
Yes.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Next up, future meetings. All meetings are held here at 6:30, or actually 6 o'clock now, in the McCutcheon Boardroom, Administration Boardroom. March 19th, April 16th, and May 21st are the next 3 meetings. Superintendent's report.
Board, just a couple of things to make you aware of. We are transitioning from that yucky winter cold and snowy stuff into that spring, and the temperatures are working on leveling out. Just a reminder to our community, our teachers and everybody, that sick flu bug is going around, so take some extra precautions. Make sure that if you're not feeling good and you're sick, stay home. We encourage that with our parents with kids. When those kiddos get sick and have the stuffy noses, stay home. We are seeing a little bit of uptick in flu in some of our buildings right now, so we've taken some extra precautions of just getting down and do a little extra deep cleaning and sanitizing and doing some of those things. So that's first. Secondly, congratulations to all of our winter sports, basketball, swim, everybody wrestling, and I know I'm going to forget them all, but I'm not intentional. They have all done an excellent job. We've had kids go to semi-state, state, all over the place. So our athletic programs continue to thrive. So we're excited about that. Lastly, just a quick construction update. I've had a chance to sit with Kinder Construction and kind of go through our timelines with some of those things. I am excited to announce that, our tennis pavilion and our shot put, high jumps, long jumps, our baseball and softball locker rooms, those will all be completed by 3/1, so March 1st. Some of the spring sports are already in action on kind of working out on some of it's interesting to see the baseball kids out on the football field already, so I love it because that's what it was kind of designed for. But we will have our new facilities up and ready to go for when those athletic events get up and going. So I know those coaches and kids are pretty excited with it. And then lastly, our football locker room or that multi-purpose locker room, I should say, is really on par to be ready come July 1. So I'm pretty excited about those timelines and where they're at. So hopefully once things get a little bit nicer outside and things dry up, I'd love to get the board out there to walk you through some of those facilities because they are outstanding.
Board member comments.
I hate to even say anything, but just had a couple thoughts as I was listening to the demographic presentation, and extremely interesting. The only thing I will tell you is that the IHSAA, about a week ago, I think reclassified everything and started to put schools in their 2-year classifications. And I'm not sure how many of you are aware of it, but the high school, when I was AD at the high school, we were looking at enrollments of about between 800 and 900 kids. Matter of fact, I think we'd even gotten up to 900 at one point in time. And we were either always, there for a long time, we were the largest 3A school and then the smallest 4A school in football. Then we became right in the middle of 4A with our enrollment. And then when I saw the other day that our high school enrollment was down to 740 some students and dropped us back down into 3A, I was excited in the fact that we don't have to go up against some of the dwingers in the world anymore. But what got me more than anything was the fact that you start to think we've lost 160 some kids at that high school or whatever over the last 6 or 7 years. That's quite a drop. And then we used to always be so much bigger than everybody else in the conference, and I looked at that West Noble enrollment and started to think that we're only 20 students off of where West Noble is right now. So we've noticed quite a drop. The other thing that caught my mind is, or that really caught me, was when he started talking about available housing. And I don't know if any of you have been able to look on Zillow or any of the real estate services in the county. There is nothing out there right now. And I thought it was interesting when he started talking about those empty nesters starting to get rid of their homes so that some of these younger families can come in. And I really hope that happens, because if it doesn't, we're in some really hard, tough financial situations here. And if you look, there's a lot of properties up there at the $1 million, and I'm not so sure how many of our working class young couples in this community can afford that kind of housing. So I thought it was very interesting. I'm glad we did that report, because I think it really opened up my eyes as to see what things are happening and what are going to happen. So
I'd like to congratulate and say thank you to a couple of our retirees, John Berger and Joy Ross. I had John Berger, I coached him across the country my first year, and he was terrible, except he was very fast. So he was always my seventh man. So if I need somebody to turn on the jets to pick up a point, John was the guy. Other than that, he's at the end of our group. But outstanding teacher, outstanding human being, and same with Joy. So I wanted to thank them and congratulate them.
Congratulations again, Mr. Moore. If there's no further business before the board, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
And the vote, please.
Mr. Archbold?
Yes.
Mrs.
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor? And Mr. Ridenour?
yes.